guys, welcome into this, another boxing prediction and breakdown show for this weekend's hotly contested welterweight clash between Terence Crawford and Kell Brook, live on ESPN+. We will also give some quick thoughts and opinions on this weekend's other big fight over in London between Katie Taylor and Miriam Gutierrez, which is live on DAZN. So let's get into it. Terence Crawford enters Saturday night's fight in Las Vegas as a massive -1400 favourite against Kell Brook, and frankly, those odds are unjustified in my eyes. It's obviously, while I no doubt feel that Crawford should be favoured in this one, -1400 is flat out ridiculous. Crawford has never been in there with a guy at 147 as skilled as Brook is. And for people expecting a walkover here, similar to what we've seen against Amir Khan last year, for example, I simply don't see it. 3 years ago, both Kell Brook and Errol Spence were considered two of the best welterweights on the planet when they clashed at Bramall Lane over in England. And even though I was on Errol Spence in that fight, I nevertheless felt Kell Brook clearly won the first half of that fight as he outboxed Spence early with some great lateral movement and a sizable hand speed gap as well, which he'll take into this fight. Eventually, however, Spence did manage to close that distance and stop Brook in the 11th round with a vicious onslaught as Brook's eye issues from the Triple G fight resurfaced once again. Now, it must be noted that they were two different eyes, that Triple G and Spence got to, but nonetheless, he's definitely got some orbital bone problems there. But in terms of actual boxing skill and ring acumen, look, Kell Brook simply can't be dismissed in this one. He looks in phenomenal shape for this fight. And for those people assuming it's a cash grab to cap off an already great career, I just don't see it. A lot more money could have been generated by either him waiting until live gates got back up and running, turning over to the PBC now that he's a free agent, or finally setting up that fabled domestic clash against Amir Khan. Fighting one of the best pound-for-pound fighters on the planet right now in front of no crowd against a fighter in Crawford whose pay-per-view numbers have been, look, let's face it, average at best in the middle of a pandemic, simply doesn't make financial sense. But what I do think it does is highlight how serious Kell Brook is taking this fight on, and hopefully we see a throwback version of Kell heading into this one, which should make for a spectacular matchup, between these two fighters. Turning over the London DAZN card, Katie Taylor takes on Miriam Gutierrez for Taylor's undisputed lightweight crown. Now, first things first, Katie Taylor is no doubt one of the best female boxers on the planet at the minute. And, without question, one of the best Olympians and athletes Ireland's ever produced in its history, so could get in some trouble for this one. However, the hype surrounding her has simply got out of control. While she is one of the greatest amateur female fighters of all time, no question there, 18 gold medals testifies to this. She simply hasn't transitioned that amateur pedigree yet fully into the professional game. Taylor turned pro at the age of 30, and that's simply too late to adapt to what is in effect a technically different sport. While she has fantastic ring movement and coordination in the ring, plus the ability to rip off those short, fast combinations also, she fails to sit down on any of her punches and is weak going to the body, meaning, like her recent wars against Delphine Pearson show, she can't stop aggressive fighters walking her down. I thought Pearson won both fights against Taylor, and the fact that Taylor had over a year to prepare for a much called for rematch between the pair highlights her pro game limitations to me. Yes, a fight against Amanda Serrano fell through in the intermediary between those two fights, but Taylor surely knew Pearson was the next number on that hit list, and after making excuses after the first fight, she had none the second time around. For me, the road's running short for Eddie Hearn on who he can potentially matchmake Taylor against in the near future, while still allowing her to keep all her titles. Her opponent, Miriam Gutierrez, is a fighter who started boxing at 31, turned pro at 34 with an amateur record of just 5-11, and has 13 wins since, the highlight of which was probably against 40-year-old Sam Smith last year. The fact that she even gets a shot at the undisputed lightweight women's crown with that record, basically shows how weak the women's divisions are right now. If that Amanda Serrano fight does materialise in the new year, however, I'll be all over the Puerto Rican in that one, as to me, she presents a real upgrade to what Taylor has faced previously in her career. So let's hope we get that fight announced early in 2021. We have a 5% boxing package up for this weekend's Terence Crawford Kell Brook fight that we just talked about, which contains a host of props we like in that fight. So head on over to WagerTalk for that, as we're currently on a 12-1 run in boxing right now since all the way back to last year. That'll wrap things up for this edition of the Boxing Prediction Show. As always, leave us your thoughts, and you can also catch me over on Twitter at the SportsWolf83 and at my handicapper page, Kevin Dolan, over at WagerTalk. As always, thanks for listening, and until next time, Slán